So you may have noticed that the winter of 2013 and 2014 was absurdly cold. We had things like the lakes freezing over, record amounts of snow, and polar vortexes, all in the span of about 3 months of frozen hell. But what caused all this, and how does this fit into the scientific consensus of global warming? Well, first let's talk about what the polar vortex was. Starting on January 2nd, temperatures were predicted to plummet for the eastern half of the United States, dropping them as much as 40 to 50 degrees below their climate normal. The term really started to pick up around that day, supposedly coined by a meteorologist. Well, the thing is, polar vortexes aren't new. In fact, they happen quite regularly, albeit not normally at this strength or persistence. They were first described all the way back in the mid 1800s, and real scientific data gathering about them started in the 1950s. What basically happens is the jet stream becomes very erratic. Instead of being a relatively stable stream of air 35,000 feet in the air, which blows west to east and is the delineation line between very cold air and warmer air during the winter, the jet stream begins to meander heavily. After this heavier meandering, the jet stream starts to drop much further south than it normally does, bringing with it much colder air than what is normal. As a result, areas that are covered by the polar vortex are subjected to very cold temperatures and in some cases a great deal more snow than what is normal. In the case of snow, we saw Detroit get more than twice as much snow as it usually gets. Chicago, at the time this video was made, was just short of their all-time record and was likely to surpass it. And places in the South that were completely unprepared for snow were brought to their knees by only a few snow events. Atlanta got only a few inches of snow and the entire city shut down, though to be fair, they only had 4 snow trucks for an entire metropolitan area of 6 million. In terms of cold temperatures, it was in fact very cold. Temperatures in Lansing reached a low of -11 on both January 3rd and February 28th. Temperatures in International Falls, Minnesota, also known as America's icebox, reached -43 on January 2nd. As a result, the Great Lakes froze over to their highest levels of ice since we've been keeping track with maps and satellites. As of March 12, 2014, the Great Lakes were covered by an incredible 92.2%, with only Lake Ontario not being almost completely covered. To say this was unexpected considering the recent trend in Great Lakes ice would be an understatement. So, how does this fit into a world that is warming? Well, think of it this way. Yes, it was quite cold here in the eastern United States, but global warming is a planet-scale phenomenon. Just because it was cold where you were for a few months doesn't mean that the world wasn't warming. When the polar vortex first showed up in early January, it was 60 degrees in Anchorage, Alaska, and record temperatures were seen throughout the western half of the continent. In fact, on a global scale, January was the 4th warmest on record, which goes back nearly 150 years.